Yeah, I can't see anything. What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Happy Ginger Runner Live, episode number 177 with Kaytlyn Gerbin tonight. I'm really excited. We get it. It's Eclipse Day. Happy Eclipse Day. I'm realizing this is we got way more than our money's worth with these glasses by wearing them on the show. Totally worth it. But unfortunately, can't see anything. Can't see anything. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 177. We have Kaytlyn Gerbin on tonight's show. For those of you who are unfamiliar, she placed 4th at Western States this year, has placed first, basically podiumed in almost every race she's run. She's a fantastic runner, Pacific Northwest, a local runner as well. And we're going to talk to her all about this weekend's upcoming Cascade Crest, which I was going to say yours truly. That's not how that works. Yours truly. Kim will also be running that this weekend. So we're going to banter and talk a bit about that race and how Kaytlyn's been training, adventuring up here in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be a really fun show.
Yeah.
With lots of Eclipse coverage. We're going to cover all of the Eclipse stuff. So welcome everyone to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 177. This is it. Ginger Runner. Yay! What is up, everyone? Happy Ginger Runner Live Monday. Thank you for spending your Monday with us. Episode number 177. Just because there's no reason to put these back on. People already saw them.
I'm just gonna do this the whole time and just like try and type in the chat room.
Also, our guest fully brought on
hey guys.
brought on her Eclipse glasses as well. I just wanted her to I wanted to show you that she did bring hers onto the show. I didn't without the full introduction yet, but we'll get to that in just a second. Huge week in ultra running and trail running. Lots of stuff happened this last weekend. The Eclipse happened today. I don't know.
Is that what was happening?
Yeah, I don't know who won the Eclipse today, but they certainly the moon nailed it. The moon won today.
I did see that. I think the space station photobombed the
that was pretty neat.
Pictures of the eclipse.
Yeah, that was actually pretty legit. So welcome everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for taking the time out of your Monday to spend it with us here at Ginger Runner Live. We've got episode number 177. Our guest tonight is a badass local trail runner here, local in the Pacific Northwest, but just badass in general because she's won almost every race that she's entered or at least podiumed. And she placed 4th at this year's Western States 100, which we all know is very difficult, very hot. This is a hot year. 100-mile race in Northern California. She placed 4th there, earning her a spot to come back next year. And in the interim between Western States and 100-mile this coming weekend, Cascade Crest, which she will also be running, she won the Needles 50K. So she's like training and running and racing and just kicking so much major ass that I'm so excited to have her on the show tonight.
Yeah.
I want to remind everyone, of course, that you are...
My name is Kim.
Good work.
As always, you guys, I am in the chat room. So if you guys have questions for our guests, please ask them there. I'll be pulling them throughout the show.
Without further ado, before I introduce Kaytlyn, I want to make sure that I thank Mr. Brian Sands,
yes,
a Patreon supporter at the top tier now for a couple of months. And he's basically at that top tier, making sure that Ginger Runner Live happens every single week. So big shout out to Brian Sands, who is training for his first marathon. Each week we talked a little bit about kind of where he's at with his training.
He had a big run this weekend.
He had a big run this last weekend, 24 miles. It is his longest run to date. He, in his journey to his first marathon, he has lost 100 pounds over the years. And it's an inspiring story. And what I love is that he is a constant viewer. Every Monday he's watching the show. The community has been incredibly supportive. And this last weekend, Brian accomplished 24 miles, which he never thought he could do, but he's just training so well, and he's going to crush the Chicago Marathon, which is on October 8th, which is the same as GRVR, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah.
So thank you, Brian, for helping make Ginger Runner Live happen. So if you're in the comments and you are in the live chat, make sure you give Brian a shout out and congratulate him, because that's a pretty big accomplishment. I remember the first time I crossed over 20 miles. It sucked.
But it's one of those like huge milestones.
Huge milestones.
Yeah.
Because you never think you think you will never be able to do it.
Yeah.
And then you do and go, well, maybe some other things are possible. It literally is the gateway. So I'm warning you, Brian. Next stop, Ultratown. What am I, Guy Fieri of trail? That was terrible. Just got to bleach my hair blonde and
don't do it.
Okay, I won't. Okay, let's get to our guest. I want to spend as much time talking with her as possible during tonight's show. Without further ado, Kaytlyn Gerbin.
Yay!
Now we're not that. What's going on? How are you? First of all,
I'm great. Doing good.
We're not that far apart. So you're local. You're a Northwest Seattleite, Washingtonian. We're like, how many miles apart are we? 10?
Probably 10 or 15. Yeah, I live in Issaquah, which is one of the suburbs, I guess, of Seattle. So like 15 miles east of Seattle.
So what I noticed, like when Kaytlyn and I just first started talking, I was like, she has green trees in the background. I mean, she's close to the woods. Yeah. And when I asked her, she's like, oh, I live in Issaquah. So Issaquah is a fantastic training ground only because they have what are called the Issy Alps, which I've, of course, I've been learning the local lingo. Even though I lived here for most of my life, I had no idea that these were called the Issy Alps and there's these huge mountains. So this is your backyard. You have a pretty decent backyard for training.
It is now. Yeah, my husband and I moved out here in the winter. So we've been out here for about 6 months or so. And it's been really fun having Cougar Mountain that we can run to. And then we have like a little sketchy way we can get over to Squawk, which is pretty fun. And then Tiger Mountain's just close by too. So it's nice having that as a change.
I can imagine. I mean, running in the city here is great from time to time, but being able to get into the greenscape and the mountains beyond is pretty amazing. How big of a part of your life is, did you grow up in the Northwest, first of all?
No, I grew up in Wisconsin and then moved out here 6 years ago for grad school.
How big of a part of your life is just the adventure lifestyle? Because it's kind of ingrained in people who grow up here, camping, mountains, getting up to peaks and stuff like that. How big of a part of your life has it become?
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, growing up in Wisconsin, obviously there's no mountains, but I was a kid that was always running around outside. We lived in a really small farming town and had a lot of land nearby. And so we had woods and trails and stuff that I was never like trail running, but, just as a kid running around and climbing trees and stuff like that outside. And was kind of always going on summer camping trips and things. And eventually, especially after moving out to the Northwest, that turned into like backpacking trips and hiking and mountaineering. And then I'd say probably pretty quickly within moving out to the Northwest, it's transitioned into like almost every weekend that we have free. We're going out and doing something in the mountains. And so, yeah, I'd say it's actually most, especially when you're training for like 100 or like, training for any like ultra distance thing, a lot of your free time is spent running on the trails. And so I'd say like most of my free time is spent in the woods doing something. So.
Have you always been a runner? I mean, is ultra running something that intrigued you for a long time? Or are you just kind of dabbling in it? Or kind of what's your relationship with ultra running?
Yeah, so I ran my first 50K, which was also my first trail race in 2014. That was Baker Lake 50K, which is not that far away from here. It's a really fun little race. And I'd been doing... Yes, that was only a few years ago. And I guess probably after that, there was kind of a 6-month lull where I didn't know if I wanted to do another trail race or another ultra again, because I had kind of a awesome experience, but also kind of rough experience with the first one. And I'd been doing road marathons before that. So towards the end of college, I started just kind of running roads for fun and stuff. And then that transferred over to doing a few different marathons. And so when I first moved out to Seattle, I was doing a lot of road marathons, just super non-competitively, kind of just to do it for fun. So.
I mean, now just looking at your ultra resume, at least what's on Ultra Sign Up, it's pretty obvious that after that first 50K, I don't know what you did, but you decided like, I'm going to come back and just dominate. Because every distance that you've run since then, first. I mean, it's awesome. Was there something that clicked, or did you have like a mindset of, I'm going to push myself a little bit harder than I did my first one, or what sort of changed, at least in your approach to ultra running?
To be honest, I don't really know. Like the first one, I didn't have my fueling figured out. I was kind of training mostly as I would for a road marathon, and I didn't really know like what kinds of like specific trail stuff to do. And I was getting out on trails then that summer leading up to that first 50K, but it was a lot of like long, slow, fast packing days or something. So I wasn't really doing a lot of like trail running as I would do now. And then that second 50K I did was Beacon Rock. And I remember going into that and with the main goal of just being like, I want to figure out my fueling. And I, had a few different things that I was going to try. And at some point in the race, it's that course is like 2 loops. And I remember going into it just knowing there's like a giant climb, and you come down, there's another giant climb. And like, you basically in the middle of it, you run past your car and your campsite and you see the finish line, and there's a 25K at the same time. So like people are like finishing the 25K and you're going out for another loop. And like, I had no expectations at all. And at some point, with a few miles to go, I don't know, somewhere in there, a few miles to go, I ended up passing a girl, and I came into an aid station, and someone told me like, "Hey, you're in 3rd, great job." And I was like, "What? Like, how? Like, they must be wrong. Like that can't possibly be true." And then, so I finished. I think I got 2nd in that race. 2nd or 3rd, I don't remember. But that was kind of just like this major point of disbelief. Yeah, where I totally was not expecting that, and had never been even close to being competitive in running road marathons before. And so it was kind of this big shock that I was really excited about. And then from there, I guess it kind of just maybe opened my eyes a little bit to like, hey, like I might be okay at this. Like maybe I should like start actually trying to train a little more, or like thinking about what races I want to do. So
it's awesome to kind of hear those stories where you're almost accidentally in 2nd place. I mean, every time I'm running and someone's like, "You're in 1st place," I'm like, "You're lying," and they are, because I'm never in 1st place. But I think it's awesome to just kind of feel that organic grasp at podium spots. It's awesome. I also want to point out that last year we had Danucci on the show right around this exact same time, almost 1 year ago exactly, because he was fresh off the Squamish 50-50.
And that was just this weekend.
That was exactly. And I thought this would be a perfect time to talk about that. Kaytlyn Gerbin, you won the 50-50 last year. We didn't get a chance to get you on the show, which I regret, because that I have such a close connection to that race. It's Gary Robbins' big to do up there in Squamish. It's a fantastic series of races: 50-mile 50K, 23K, and the 50-50, which is a 50-mile 50K. So you've done that, you've won it. And was that the hardest thing you had done up to that point last year?
I would actually say that's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah, it was definitely the hardest thing I had done up to that point. And I signed up for that partially. I mean, I was just like, I guess I'd say I'd still probably pretty naive, but definitely back then I was like thinking like I kind of wanted to do a 100-miler, but I didn't think I had the time to train for it, given like what my schedule was like last summer. And so I signed up for the 50-50 thinking that would be an easier thing to do, which now that I've done it, I think maybe that's not true. But yeah, that was, God, the 50-50 is just awesome. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that like, you don't even know how your legs are still possibly moving, and then they are. I don't know if you remember, like, as Ethan, you did it too, right? And then,
I did it the inaugural year, and I won. I didn't win, but
first place.
I was first place. Me, I was first place. Ethan, it's hard, and we have a lot of viewers that actually participated in the Squamish events this last weekend. I wanted to make sure that we point that out.
Yes, congratulations to all of you guys who ran any of the distances up there this weekend. I do believe we have some Patreon supporters that actually did the 50-50 as well. And I know some of you guys did the other distances, so congrats to all of you.
We love talking about the race. We weren't able to make it this year purely because of Cascade Crest prep and stuff like that.
I was like too busy worrying all weekend.
Literally, Kim's just, I can't leave the house. I'm just worrying. I totally understand, but it is a fantastic event, and as Kaytlyn, I'm sure you can attest, it's not easy. None of the distances are easy.
I'd give a huge shout out to anybody who just did the races this weekend. Like, I have a few friends, but also, I mean, like, just anyone who's watching or listening that has done the races. I feel like Gary's races are just insane, and especially Squamish. It's like there's no, well, I guess the 50-miler has like a flat section, but that just means all of the elevation gain is compressed to like
squish it.
40 miles. Yeah. But you know, those courses are just pretty gnarly. So.
And you know, before I get too far into the show, I also want to point out there were other races this weekend, and I'm going to obviously forget to give accolades to a lot of people tonight. But Leadville was this last weekend, and Ian Sharman, former guest of the show, won overall for the 4th time. He's won that event, which is insane. We're going to have him actually on in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And of course, Devin Yanko, former guest of the show, she won the female side. just bonkers. It was really cool to follow that whole race and see how it unfolded, because that's at altitude, and that is a no bonkers. No, it is a no question difficult race.
You okay?
I don't know.
It's a bonkers race.
A bonkers race is kind of what I wanted to get to. And Mike Wardian, of course, another former guest of the show, did what only one other person in the history has done, which is run Leadville, finish Leadville, and then run the Pikes Peak Marathon after sleeping in the car for how long?
He got in his car, drove, and had like a 30-minute nap or something like that. I don't get it.
There's only one.
I'm
like, on the planet, there's only one person that could do stuff like that, and that's Wardian. But of course, this is something that only one other human in history has done, and I believe it was 93 or 94. It was Superman. Okay. It was a long time ago. Okay, so Kaytlyn, I want to talk a bit about the time now between Squamish 50/50 last year and States this year. So you started to ramp up mileage, 100K, stuff like that. You got your qualifier. You did what you needed to do. Did you have your sights set on States primarily?
No, not really, actually. So after Squamish 50/50, kind of on a whim, I decided to sign up for Pine to Palm 100. And that was more basically because I guess I had proved to myself that I could do the mileage by doing Squamish. And then I'm like, well, I'm trained for it. Might as well do Pine to Palm. So I was really glad to get, like, I was really glad for that, like, first 100-mile experience. And I guess even then, maybe, I guess I was a little bit thinking about Western States and thinking about, okay, I have a lottery ticket now because I had done Gorge the year before, or that spring. So I had a lottery entry for Western States. And I also was kind of toying with the idea of thinking about trying to do race Gorge again this spring, and maybe try to golden ticket there. But at that point, I still really had no idea if that was even, I didn't know if that was doable for me because I hadn't really, at that point, I was still really kind of trying to figure out racing and distances and stuff. But it was a little bit in the back of my head. And so when I did Pine to Palm, I was, just thinking about it as trying to learn how to do the distance and learn as much as I could from it. Because I think with your first 100-miler, like, it's a total crapshoot. Like it could go awesome or it could not. And I think there's a lot of things that can happen. And so I was just trying to use it as a learning experience. And then by
the way, you won. I want to make sure that
Kaytlyn's casually mentioning Pine to Palm.
But I think that's also testament to your character, Kaytlyn. You won Pine to Palm, which is not an easy 100-miler. I have not run it, but I know all about it. I've studied this thing, and it is not easy. And you just cranked out the win. No big deal. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, it's okay. So so I then fall rolled around, and at that point, then I was had gotten into, or signed up for Gorge 100K and was definitely thinking about trying to train for it and trying to golden ticket to get to Western States. And so, I trained through I actually took probably like 2 months off, I guess, from October to December, 2 months off of really run. I mean, I ran a little bit, but I definitely wasn't training. And actually part of that was because my body needed the recovery. But also part of it also was made easier by the fact that I was defending my thesis. And so I was really busy during then. And so it was kind of a huge relief to not have to worry about training or anything. So I took some time off and then started training again in the winter and got signed up for Orca's 50K. I think that's the second time I've done the 50K. And so that's in early February, and that was a good kind of test. It actually mostly was good motivation to be able to keep training through the winter because, as you guys know, in the Northwest, like the winters out here get pretty dark and rainy and dreary.
And this one was especially bad.
Yeah, this one was pretty rough. And so it definitely helped to have a race early on in the season to kind of keep me motivated to train. So I ran Orca's 50K, and then Gorge was, I think, about 2 months after that. So I was definitely at that, especially after Orcas, and I kind of had a sense of what my fitness was and what I thought I could do in the coming months for training. I thought that it was feasible for me to really go and try to race Gorge. So then that's what I went there to do.
And you won and got your golden ticket. So it's essentially automatic entry into the Western States 100. Now, this is what I think is really unique about you, Kaytlyn, is that you, living in the Northwest, had to suffer through one of the worst winters on record as far as rain. It was almost 7 or 8, I don't know the exact number, but it was a record-breaking number of rain days. There was, I don't think, any sun for 7 months or something, or any stop in some sort of moisture accumulation, which is ridiculous because now the summer is completely opposite. We broke records with the longest no rain streak up here. But you had to train for what is notoriously a difficult hot 100 in not ideal conditions. What did you do that allowed you to show up and execute?
It's in terms of heat or just training?
Yeah, let's talk heat specifically.
So heat, I tried to get out. I mean, it wasn't very hot here, but there were a few weekends where it was hot in Eastern Washington. So that's one thing I love about Washington is that you don't have to drive very far to get to a totally different climate. And so if you just drive 2 hours over the pass, you know, it's dry and sunny, even if it's raining over here. Not always, but a lot of times it is. And so I made it over to Yakima area and did a few training runs. Actually on the so Rain Shadow Running does a race out there, the Yakima 50K and 25K. And the course, the 25K course in particular, goes up. Maybe they both do. It's the same course, but you know, 25K is obviously you turn around earlier. And there's some canyons that just are totally sun exposed and get pretty hot. So I went out there, I think 2 different times to do that course. And so that kind of helped get some practice moving in the heat. And then I made it out to Winthrop area, so further over Eastern Washington, and ran on part of another one of Rain Shadow's races courses, Sun Mountain course. And then actually, so I then also signed up for Sun Mountain 50K, which was 3 or 4 weeks, I think 4 weeks maybe before Western States, and ran that. And that was, I mean, it was hot, especially because in Seattle around that time, I want to say it was only like 65 degrees as a high every day. And then everyone went to the race, and the race was like in the 80s. So that's not nearly as hot as States, but it still felt really hot coming from like 60-degree weather. So yeah, I was trying to, you know, get out when I could to do the heat training, but then in the NA, I also I started going to a sauna, which I think is, I don't know, there's other ways to do it. I know people who like wear a lot of like excessive layers and go for a run, but to me, like running, that just sounds miserable. And I like want my run to be an escape and to be like fun. And just sweating through layers of clothes sounds a little too oppressive for me to do that all the time. So it was much more enjoyable to like go get a quick session in a sauna and like have that as a relaxing part of my training. So yeah, I did that actually, but I didn't really start doing that until month after I started tapering for States. So I was a little worried actually that my sauna training wasn't going to work out because I had it was just like hard to plan, but then I also had some travel for work in the week, I think the week before States. So I wasn't sure how that was going to go, but I think it worked out fine. So that was good.
I mean, were you nervous at all? Because even just using a couple days training in the Eastern Washington or some sauna days, I would still, myself, I'd be like, oh God, I'm going to get eaten alive by the heat. It seems like you didn't suffer too badly in the heat, but were you scared that you would leading into the race or anything like that? Yeah,
that was probably my biggest uncertainty going into the race because since I have never raced so Pine to Palm was actually very hot last year. So it was I think it was almost got up to 100 degrees during parts of the course. And that course is also really exposed. So I had some experience racing in the heat, but that almost made me more worried because I'm like, that course, I knew I wanted to run a little bit faster or feel a little stronger than I did then. So, I had that, but I had that to help learn from. So yeah, I was definitely a little worried about the heat, but I just kind of had to trust that the sauna training that I did was enough. And then also just be really proactive about managing the heat. And so one thing, actually, my friend and pacer for Western States, Ladia, had told me some great advice about how like heat is an adversity that you can address. Like you can actually manage it. If you go and race at altitude or you go, race in like really bad like weather conditions sometimes like there's only so much you can do, but like heat, at least like you can slow your pace down, you can listen to your body, and you can, stay wet and stay iced. And so I tried to remind myself of that and remind myself that everyone who is out there racing was going through the same heat. And some people obviously train more in the heat, but you just have to run within your limits, I guess. So I tried to remind myself of that during the day.
We have tons of questions, and I can just talk and talk and talk. So I apologize for neglecting a lot of the live questions. Kim, what do we got?
Yeah, question from Kim in the chat room. Question for Kaytlyn. Which was harder to deal with at Western States? Early snowy footing or overall heat management?
I think the heat management was harder to deal with for me. But that partially I would say is because a lot of my training runs leading up to States were running in snowy, mucky, muddy trails and not in heat. So, the snow and so for people that don't know, like the first like 15 to 20 miles of the course was just snow covered, like you were side slipping on snow, post holing through stuff. Then there was this like bog mud, you'd step in and your shoe would, your shin would sink all the way through, and some of people's shoes came off. Mine didn't, luckily, but so that was definitely worse than what I was anticipating it would be like. But at least, as I was running through that, I kind of just was like laughing to myself, like, this is just ridiculous. Like, come on, like this is like the first 10 miles of my 100-mile race, and I'm already dealing with like just like shin deep mud and following flags, like, but at least like, I think I could laugh about it a little bit, just because I run in kind of shitty muddy trails a lot sometimes. So at least I felt like I knew that I could slow my pace and manage that a little bit more. And the heat was just something that it was a bit of a gamble, because I haven't really had a lot of experience running in heat like that. So that was something that I felt like I just had personally less experience with. So I think I did I'm really happy with how I managed the heat during the race, but that was as it was going on. You're kind of second guessing if maybe you should have gotten more ice, or maybe I should be doing this or that. So it's a little harder to know without doing it a lot.
For sure. Let's get a couple more questions here.
Yeah, question from Randy in the chat room. Kaytlyn, what kind of expectations did you have before Western States? Top 5, top 10? Did you have a specific goal that you wanted to accomplish?
Yeah. So my goal going into it was to get top 10, mostly because I knew I wanted an opportunity to come back next year, and I really didn't want to have to race my way into it again, because that was hard to train through a grueling winter out here. And also is a little hard, it's not really ideal to find out you're running a 100-mile race 2 months before. So I wanted to get top 10, but to be honest, I really had absolutely no idea where I was going to fall in there, and no idea how I would pan out compared to other people I was running against. And that was, Western States was by far the most competitive race I've ever run. I think it's arguably one of the most competitive ultras in the US, and I'd mostly done a lot of local races. And so I knew about what time I thought I could get, at least based on Pine de Palm, based on Squamish, and some other races I'd done. So I kind of had a few different goals based on just purely on time. And I felt pretty good about that, but I really had no idea where that time would fall relative to other people. And especially this year, with all these, I just remember seeing all these articles, like most competitive women's field, like crazy women's field. And I was just thinking like, wow, shit, like, I don't know. Like, hopefully, like, I'm like, I could have possibly run like one of the fastest times at States, and it still could have easily been 15th place based on who is running it. So that's something that like with any race, really, you can't control how fast other people run, or you can't control other people's days. And so I try to run my own race. And part of the way I do that is by figuring out some different time goals and then readjusting those goals as the days go on. So.
I think, again, as a spectator and a fan of the sport, I think your execution at States is is testament to patience and understanding what your day is like and what you can do on that day and what you're capable of. I think it's the coolest thing that you were able to place 4th out of, like you said, one of the most
women's field was
bonkers fields that's been at any real race. And I think that's awesome. So you'll be able to go back and you'll be able to give it another shot, which I think is pretty cool. Let's get to one more live viewer question, and then we'll start moving into the Cascade Crest talk.
Sure. Yeah, there's a great question from Nathaniel. Question for Kaytlyn. Where does your Western States 100 4th place finish rank compared to your other finishes? Do you consider it your coming out moment?
Oh. From an outsider's perspective, definitely, because I think I don't know. I've gotten like more. I guess maybe more people know who I am now after Western States. But I'd say, it's fair to say that. I'd say I also had I don't know. I like really like thinking about Squamish 50-50, and I feel like in that race I really proved a lot to myself. And so if I'm just thinking about like personally what I feel like I'm capable of, I think I learned a lot about myself in racing during that race. But then running at Western States and competing against women who I've looked up to and who I know and who I recognize on the course and stuff like that, that was kind of just like next level, pretty cool for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a global stage and certainly an incredible performance on a global stage. I am a big fan of the Northwest, Washington, Oregon, even up into British Columbia, Idaho, because the races that are up here are like, none of them are easy. Even the easy races are not really easy, especially if you start getting into the Cascades or up into the North Shore of Vancouver, and Oregon has altitude and all sorts of crazy stuff. So Kaytlyn has already made a name for herself up here in the Northwest, and like all the race, basically every major Northwest race, Kaytlyn has won or podium. And these are big races for the Northwest region. Obviously, States is much more of the global audience, so I can certainly see how that would be a get your name out there sort of thing. I love that Squamish 50-50 though is the one that you would think is or that you would claim is the one that you really felt your breaking out performance, because that's also, I didn't win. I didn't come close. I did win. Thanks. But finishing 50-50 to me was one of those moments that I went, I don't belong here. Like, I don't belong at this finish line because this was impossible. And I just did something that was impossible. Like that to me was the kind of my moment of, maybe the things I think are impossible aren't impossible. It's like the cliche, but
it's like the moment where you think like, okay, I got this. Like, I can do this. You know?
Yeah. Right. And I love that you just took that training and went right into pine to palm and then 1 pine to palm. I wish I had done that, because I think what I did instead was I went to Disneyland and ate all the churros and then spent 3 months just
getting squishy.
I should have run pine to palm. That's what I should have done.
We actually do have somebody in the chat room, Wing, I believe, just ran the 50-50, and he is also running pine to palm.
Yeah, wow. I believe earlier in the chat room, Wing said, "Can Kaytlyn just spend the entire show telling me what to do at pine to palm?" Which I think is.
I will say I didn't. I think I ran maybe twice in between, and it was 3 weeks in between. I hardly ran at all.
There you go, Wing. So get out there and win pine to palm. There's your advice.
That's all you got to do is just not run.
Eat and sleep as much as you can, and just don't worry about it.
That was actually my Squamish 50-50 plan too, between the 50 miler and 50K. In between was to just eat.
You basically got horizontal and just started eating.
That was it. There was no other like, oh, I got to do this to recover and do that. It was put a pie in my mouth, pizza, and sleep. That was it, and it worked. What did you do between? What was your secret between? Did you do anything specific?
I had a grand plan, and actually the day kind of didn't go exactly. There were some switch ups in the day. We came up with a few friends, including one international runner who came and like stayed with us, and she traveled up with us, a runner from Nicaragua who we met actually on a running vacation. Well, it was kind of our honeymoon actually, but not a very fancy honeymoon. So we met this other girl who came up with us, and she was running the 50-50 as well. And she had a pretty rough day out on the first day and didn't finish until like right around the cutoff. And so my plan of going home and sleeping early and eating a lot of food didn't pan out because I was just hanging out at the finish line. But it was, you know, I tried to lay around a little bit. I took like a quick soak in the water, and then I just like hung out and watched people finish and cheered for people, which was actually really fun and got me really excited. So, but yeah, I would not recommend what I did as a recovery strategy.
I do give them a lot of credit up there at the Squamish races because they make that finish line atmosphere.
It's so fun. You don't want to leave. Yeah.
And I remember that was a big problem too after the 50 miler was just, I kind of want to just hang out and party. I just finished. It was so hard all day. It was so hard. And I just want to hang out. But leaving was probably the smartest decision. And it sucked to leave the party. I want to definitely start talking about Cascade Crest. I know. Kim does not. What made you choose this race? This race falls pretty close after states. I mean, you're probably what, 6 or 8 weeks or something like, well, actually, yeah, probably closer to 8 weeks now. Yeah. Do you still feel the race in your legs after states? Do you feel ready for this race? What is your connection to it and all that sort of stuff?
I signed up for the lottery for Cascade Crest in the winter, and that was before I knew about states. And so I got into the lottery and was really excited about that. And actually, I would say kind of as soon as once I started running ultras and had kind of been told and met people who had run some of the local races, I think Cascade Crest was kind of on my radar as what I was thinking my first 100-mile race would be. But then with the timing and stuff last year, I did Pine de Palm, and then this year I was thinking like, okay, if I do 100-mile race this year, I want it to be Cascade Crest. And so that's what inspired me to, you know, sign up for the lottery. And it's mostly just because I think it's like the local race out here. And, you know, I know a lot of people that volunteer at it and that run it and put it on and stuff. And so it just seemed like if I'm running out here, I feel like it's like a race that I've really wanted to do. So I've been really excited ever since I got in on the lottery. And then once I found out about Western States, you know, I was kind of like looking at the calendar and thinking like, okay, there's 200-mile races here. Like this seems like maybe it'll be too much, but I tried not to think about it too much. I decided that Western States was going to be my goal race for the summer, and that my training and all my effort and energy and stuff was going into Western States. And then I decided if I felt okay, then, you know, I would run Cascade Crest. And so here we are a week out. I'm running Cascade Crest. I don't have any of my logistics figured out yet. I kind of have a crew put together, and the race is in like 5 days. So this is going to be great.
Well, I'm sure you probably already know this, but Cascade Crest is way easier logistically than Western States. Western States is one of the most challenging for crews because you tend to have 2 crews or 2 cars. Cascade is not only the old school race, hasn't changed, amazing aid stations, volunteers, race director, and just community, but it also is logistically pretty straightforward. So, I mean, you at least have that going for you. And
I figure like I don't need to fly anywhere. I can just like drive over the morning of. And so as long as I've got stuff to run away from the starting line, like once I start running, I'm sure I'll be fine. And then I'll just figure things out as the day goes along. But
so obviously, Kim, you're running Cascade. I want you to come up with your questions that you might have for Kaytlyn while we have her. But we also have lots of live viewer questions.
My first question is that I think I have the same shirt that you're wearing tonight.
That's
tank top from Wazelle.
Yep. And it would have been really funny if I would have worn it tonight. But we do have like tons of viewer questions. Do you want to take some of those?
Yeah, let's take some of those. Yeah.
Sure. Question from Nathaniel. How does your approach to Cascade Crest differ from Western States?
I tried, first thing, logistics. I tried to have my Western States logistics dialed, which I think for a race like that is actually really important. I came into every aid station with basically every aid station. I had the ability to basically drop a pack and pick up a new pack, or drop a bottle and pick up a pack, or something like that. And so I had kind of all these, like, especially with you, Ethan mentioned this too. I had 2 crews, and you can do that at Western States. And I had enough family and friends that were really excited to be a part of it that I had enough people to make 2 crews. And so logistically, it's really complicated if you really want to have all that really dialed. But I thought that, you know, crew did an awesome job at doing all that stuff and got me in and out really efficiently. I think given the heat and stuff there, I wasn't maybe quite as fast at the transitions as I could have been, but part of that is just like you need to get hosed down with, or get an ice bath sponge. So that takes some time. So, yeah, so I think for Cascade Crest, I'm a little less concerned about having those kinds of really quick transitions. I never really like spending much time at aid stations because I feel like you can easily waste a lot of time, you know, stopping for a while. And if you don't have things organized, then, you know, coming in when you're a little bit foggy headed and maybe tired and you've just been running for hours and then your crew's asking you what you want, like that could be a really big time suck. So I like to have a lot of that stuff figured out. So hopefully before Saturday, I'll have, you know, a list of kind of estimated times for different places where I might see my crew and then what I'll want them to give me. And then I'll also have some sort of a backup bag that if I come in and I want a different kind of fuel or want an extra shirt or something like that, that they'll have that there too. So that's probably the biggest, well, yeah, at least logistical stuff I think is a big difference. But also like Western States is much more of a like running fast racing kind of race, where I think Cascade Crest is, you know, definitely more challenging trails, a little more gnarly, and also more running at night. So I think things will just be a little bit slower with that either way.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, it's not a fast course. Like States can be really fast. Cascade's just not catering itself to fast. The PCT section is by far the fastest section of the course.
I'm like sweating, just thinking.
Welcome to my world 2 years ago. Yeah, that's normal. That's normal running your first 100. One thing I was gonna say, and we are
going to start sweat crying right now.
No, don't sweat cry. What is sweat crying?
I don't know, but it
You're
might
gonna invent
happen.
it live. One thing, Kaytlyn, just so you know, because I'm sure you haven't already thought about this, but when I came up with my splits for Cascade Crest and I gave them to my crew, my first split into, I believe it was Tacoma Pass, which I think is mile 25 or 26. I forget if that's the same distance as it is now with the additional mileage. I predicted the time of arrival, I think, was going to be 7 or 7.5 hours or something like that. 6 to 6.5 hours. I was quickly shot out of the sky by Mr. Gary Robbins after he informed me that my predicted split that I thought was like, oh, this will be a slow, easy pace into mile 25. He goes, that's the course, that's the master's record of the course by Adam Huey. And I was like, oh, so I should not expect. Things are going to
take a lot longer.
Yeah, things will take longer up front, just so you know. I'm sure you already have that. You probably already run that part to that section, but that was my biggest learning lesson was.
It's just, I think it's a slower race, and it also starts later than most hundreds too. So what I was just realizing this weekend was that I was talking to some people who had run the race before, and like going into Stampede Pass, which is mile 30 something. They're like, yeah, that's where you need to take a headlamp. And I was like, what? Like mile 30-ish? Like you need a headlamp from there? And it's like that to me was just like a little bit eye-opening, because like, oh dang, like that. I mean, it's just like there's really going to be a lot of running through the night, which, you know, is fine. But that's like mentally like thinking that, okay, you know, grabbing a headlamp at mile 30 as opposed to maybe mile like 70 or 80 in other races, like that seems like that's very early to be thinking about darkness. So.
Yeah, the race starts 4 hours after what a normal 100 would start, 5 or 6 in the morning, sometimes with other 100s. This one starts at 9, I think now. It started at 10 when I ran it.
That's right.
And you end up running with a headlamp a lot longer than you anticipate, and you end up using it. But Kim was very worried about running in the dark.
So running in the dark, running at night by myself it is one of my biggest fears and one of my biggest challenges for this race, I think. So, Kaytlyn, if you have any tips or advice on how to calm oneself down, I'm
totally with you. I'm like such a scaredy cat when it comes to running in the dark by myself. Like, I think the only time I don't know if I've really ever chosen to like go out on my own and run in the dark. Like the only times I've really done it have been when I've been out running and I've like purposely gone a slightly longer route back, knowing that I'm going to force myself to run in the dark. And then it's like, okay, you're going to do it now. It sounds like a great idea right now. You're going to regret it later, but you won't have a choice. So you just have to get used to it. But yeah, I'm like I don't know. I get freaked out. But I think during a race, it's a different kind of setting though than when you're just running and training, because in a race, like, first of all, there are tons of other people out on the course. So like, you're not alone. Like even if you're running by yourself, like chances are if you stop for like a few minutes, somebody else would catch you, or if you ran a little bit faster, you probably catch up to somebody else. So like reminding yourself that you're not on the trail alone is a big help to me. And then the other thing is that if you're running in the dark let's say during Cascade Crest, even if we're running by ourselves, like you've been running for hours. And so your mind is maybe not really like, I think you'll be more tired than you are typically on just a normal training run. And like, if you can just like keep your eye on the prize of like the next aid station or like the next crew stop or something, like just getting through that, like I bet you won't be thinking about the fact that you're running in the dark by yourself nearly as much as when you were just like out in the woods. So that's what I'm going to tell myself.
I feel like very similar things that you've talked about. Yeah. And you even said that like during your race, you didn't even really worry about it.
Not
like
once.
Like at the moment, you didn't really. Yeah,
not which is crazy. Not once. And I'm surprised we haven't talked more about running in the dark on the show. I feel like we've maybe touched on it very briefly, but this is kind of the first time we've actually. Well, let's talk about running in the dark. I totally agree, Kaytlyn. Running in the dark in training sucks. It's scary, especially if you're alone. Before Cascade Crest, I did a couple training runs with maybe one or two other people at night, maybe once or twice. And I think I did one or two alone, but they were very short. It wasn't like I was out there for 6 hours. It was like 20 minutes after the sunset. So it was just getting familiarity with a headlamp and running on trails that are illuminated. I basically went into Cascade freaked out of my mind for those night sections. I totally agree. I think your mind will be mush by the time, not mush, but it will not be worried about the darkness as much as it will be worried about, let's just get to the aid station. You're planning, those 5 or 6 miles between aid stations, you're planning, okay, this bottle needs to be refilled with this sort of thing. And that time goes by really fast. So you're worried less about animals and more about just get to the next aid station.
Right.
And I promise that's what the mind ends up doing. And I've been telling Kim this a lot too, is that no matter where you are in the course, there will always be someone in front and behind. So it might not look like it, but they could literally be 60 seconds ahead or behind you. So you're never alone, and no animals are going to want to come to where there's
I'm going to be like at the back of the pack, and they're going to be like, there's the weakest injured deer.
Yeah.
We should go get that one. That one looks slow and tired.
Like I had to tell this to Kim today. There are sweepers. So they made an announcement on Facebook that there will be sweepers as well.
I feel sorry for the sweepers, whoever those guys are.
They are the dead deers in the back that are the targets. So you have nothing to worry about.
Especially if you are towards the back, like just think of that many more people who have run through on the exact same path that you're going. And like most animals, I think, are just like terrified of something that's like loud, smelly, obnoxious with like a bulbing, bouncing headlamp coming through the woods. Like that's
totally
feels scared away. Yeah.
They want nothing to do with 200 people.
So here's my ask then, since you'll be way ahead of me, be loud, smelly, and obnoxious. So by the time I get there, they'll be like, we're good.
Yeah, Kaytlyn's got that covered.
Yeah, I'll be totally smelly for you. I'll do it for you.
Oh, I love it. Cascade is my favorite time of year. I can't wait for this weekend. I know that we still have a lot of live questions. Maybe we can get to one more before we kind of wrap up the main show here and move into the post show.
We also have to do the quick question.
Oh, I haven't forgotten.
I feel like I need to remind you just in case.
Nope. It was 1 week I forgot. We did it in the post show. I will never forget again. Go ahead.
Question from Nathaniel. Kaytlyn, can you describe the sections of Cascade Crest 100 that might challenge you, and how do you plan to overcome those challenges? If it's different than the night running, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is maybe a better question for Ethan about what parts of the course are going to challenge us that we don't know. Like, I mean, having never run the race before, I guess I don't really know. I've been on, and my plan to and yeah, it's almost embarrassing that like I live so close and I haven't been on a lot of the course yet. So I've been, and part of that was like planning to do like in between states and Cascade Crest, planning to do run some of the miles on the trails. But to be honest, I haven't really been doing a ton of like running per se. So I haven't gotten a chance to really go check out a lot of the course. But the part that I have been on is the whole like needles section, and needles 50K that I had done overlaps with a lot of that. And so I got a sense for what that will be like. And that's towards the later part of the race. And so I'm already, I mean, when I was running needles 50K, I was like trying to think to myself, like, what is this going to feel like when you're at mile 80 and you like, you know, have some of these kind of technical trails. And even like, you know, that's the part where there's a lot of like, you know, you are kind of on a descent going down, but there's still a lot of really steep little climbs, which are the needles that you go up, and they're all pretty short, but they're pretty punchy too. So I think that part will just be a bit of a challenge. Even the downhill from there, there's a lot of sections that are just really rooty and rocky, and then a few parts too that the parts that would be a little more runnable on the trail are actually really steep descents. And so I think with tired legs and being a little bit pounded up, I think that I could see that as being really challenging. So what I'm doing to prepare for that, I guess, is just acknowledging up front that like the course is going to be really hard and it's going to kick my butt, and I'm expecting that to happen, and I'm like just going to choose not to be worried about it and just go do it and see what happens.
Yeah, it's a tough course. It just is. You know, it's 100% possible. It's just a tough possible. That's basically what I've been telling Kim since day one. After I did it, before I did it, I had only run the PCT section towards the beginning, sections of it, not even the front half of that, but part of the PCT section to the Trail from Hell. And I had run a little bit of the needle section. Yeah. So I had only seen probably 60 to 70% of the entire course. I'm glad which is a lot, but I'm also glad that there was a lot that I hadn't seen, because I kind of kept mystery involved. If I had seen every section, then the part of me that's like, okay, I would have analyzed too much, I think. One thing I just love about this course, and I will talk about this till the end of time. Again, this is the only 100 that I've run, but there's something about it that I just love, and that's the unique nature of the course. It really has everything. It has big climbs. The climb right off the bat is just, it's a monster. It gets you up to Goat Peak, Blowout Mountain, but then you've got PCT, wonderful carpeted single track that takes you for close to 30 miles down a rope section, through a tunnel to Hayek, where there's just incredible food. You know, the food in the aid stations are just, it's amazing what they're able to trek up into these mountain aid stations. Then you got a big climb on a fire road and a big descent on a fire road, which usually takes place in the night for many, many people. And you have the Trail from Hell, which is a short section, but it's often very technical depending on how many trees they clear out. And plus what Kaytlyn just described, which is the needles section, which is, it's essentially a long downhill, but you've got to do a lot of climbing with a bunch of little bumps right at the top to get to that.
The needles are one of the sections that I actually haven't been on. I've been on about 50% of the course, maybe a little bit more than 50. But yeah, the needles are. And the needles will be a nice surprise.
It'll be a great
I know
surprise.
what it's about, but it's, you know.
And trust me, when you're at that point of 100, you're not going to be moving fast anyway. So this 100 is already going to be slow. It's just the needles don't make it any easier on you. And you're a really strong hiker, both up and down. So I have no doubts that you'll be able to crush it with your pacer, Linda Robbins, Carrie's wife.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome.
So Kaytlyn, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I have to say a huge congratulations to you for the Western States 4th place, first of all. We haven't got to chat with you primarily about that, but just amazing, amazing performance. I'm assuming you're going back to States next year, yeah?
Yes, totally.
Awesome. And I love that you're doing Cascade Crest this weekend. We will obviously see you out there. What are you most excited about there?
So this kind of goes to the question you just asked me. Actually, I'm just excited to go see the course. I know it's beautiful and challenging, and I'm like, I mean, that's what drew me to run it. So I'm really excited about that. And I mean, I'd say most races I've gone and like going into the courses blind, like hadn't been on any parts of the course before. And sometimes that actually, I mean, you can plan a little better maybe when you know what the course is like, but I really like going on parts of trails that I've never been on before, because at least then it gives me something that's like new and fresh every time. If I'm feeling crappy, and then at least I'm like, well, at least I'm checking out a new trail. Something that's kind of fun. So yeah, I'm just excited to get out there on the course. And also, secondly, I guess I'm just excited to see a lot of people out there, because it really is like a local, I mean, obviously people travel to it, but there's just so many people, so much support from the local running community that go out there to either run or crew, pace, or work at aid stations. So I think it'll be really fun to just see so many people out there. So
we are going to be heading out there this weekend. Kim will be running, as well as Kaytlyn. And next Monday's show will be a recap of the race. We'll obviously have Kim on.
I might still be running this time
you
next
will
week.
not. You will not still be running by Monday. But we'll have Kim on. We'll talk about her race. And maybe we can have Kaytlyn back on for a little bit to talk about her race. But it's going to be a fantastic weekend. We'll recap the entire thing and talk about the course more in detail and stuff like that next Monday. That'll be a lot of fun. Kaytlyn, have a blast. We'll see you this weekend, obviously.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Good luck, Kim, and happy last week of taper.
I think our job is what? To just eat a lot this week?
Eat and sleep.
I'm like the
get squishy.
I'm getting squishy too. I'm kind of following suit. With,
sweat cry.
Yeah, sweat cry.
And sleep.
Of course, Kaytlyn, this is your first time on Ginger Runner Live, and Kim would not let me forget this. I didn't want to forget this, but with all new guests, we do a little feature here at the end of the show, just called the Quickie Question Quiz. It's a series of rapid fire questions. You just answer with the first answer that comes to your mind. It's very easy. It's not difficult. You let me know when you're ready. Give me the thumbs up, and then we'll just rip on through.
Okay, ready to go.
All right. What was your very first race?
Walleye Weekend kids run when I was little.
Favorite running movie?
Barkley Marathon documentary.
Trails or road?
Trails.
Favorite place to run?
PCT.
Bucket list race?
Hard Rock or UTMB.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Alias.
Good choice, J.J. Abrams. Early work. That's good. Favorite pre-race meal?
It's Thai food.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
A good beer.
And finally, what shoes are you going to be running Cascade Crest in?
Good question. Glad you asked. Don't know yet.
That makes you feel better because I have like options, but I'm not.
Probably gonna be some combination of either Sportiva Helios or some ultras. So we'll see.
Awesome. That's it. You passed.
Yay!
Congratulations. Yeah, very, very easy. If you're watching live or even if you're watching the archive version, we do a post show with our guests, and the post show will include rapid fire questions. Again, we have lots from the live show that we didn't get asked, and we'll have additional questions from our Patreon supporters. And you can join us in the post show by simply going to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, it's a fraction of a cup of coffee. You support the channel, you support everything that we do here, all of the videos, all of the reviews, everything that we make, and basically allow us to do this full time, so you get constant content. But you also get some cool perks on the back end. And again, for as little as $1 a month, you get to join us every Monday for the post show with our guests. This week it's Kaytlyn. She'll be sticking around with us. Next week it'll be Kim, maybe Kaytlyn, maybe the men's winner, who knows? And the week after that, Ian Sharman has just confirmed that he will be on to talk a bit about Leadville and UTMB. Magda Boulay and a number of other athletes will be going to compete over at UTMB, and I think we're gonna have a pretty awesome show in a couple of Mondays. But just go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner and to find out more information. We just released a movie. That sounded like a song. Weirdly enough. Surprisingly, I was going to say we just released a movie on Friday called Trail Music, which is it was a fun experiment that I wanted to do where I went out on a trail run on Tiger Mountain and recorded the sounds that I made out on the trail, from hitting trees to moving ferns and stuff like that, and made music out of it. That was just released on the YouTube channel last Friday. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's just probably 2 clicks away. It is one of the most liked videos in the last couple of months, but it's also one of the most disliked videos in the last couple of months, which I thought was hilarious because people hate creativity.
People just want the reviews.
People just want the reviews, or people just want the vlogs, or people just want race videos. I get it. But it's fun. It was a fun experiment. So go check that out. I'm trying to think of anything else. Kaytlyn, where can people find you on social media? There will be questions that don't get asked and stuff. Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's my name at Kaytlyn_G. On Twitter, I think it's at Kaytlyn_Gerbin. And then Facebook.
Awesome. Go follow Kaytlyn. Show her some love on social media. Thank her for being on the show. And finally, a big thank you to Brian Sands, Patreon supporter at the top tier, who's allowed us to do Ginger Runner Live for the last 2 months, which is fantastic. Thank you, Brian. And continue to keep us posted on those training runs and leading up to the big marathon coming up on October 8th. It should be a fun journey to follow along. Maybe we'll even get him on the show, talk to him a bit about how that goes down as we get closer to the date and stuff like that. That's it for tonight's show. Kim, am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so.
You're going to do great. You're going to do great.
Fine.
We're going to have burgers tonight. You're going to do great.
Start carbo loading now.
Those burgers are going to be made of bread. You're going to do great. Thank you, everyone, for watching live. And thank you for spending the Monday with us. We'll see you guys next week, or we'll see you in the post show here in just a couple of seconds. So get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. I know I am. Thanks, guys. Bye. Ginger Runner.